Here is the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, episode number 114. This podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Turrbal people. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They were the first music makers on this land. In this episode of the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, I welcome Joe Twist. This is an amazing episode. I loved chatting to Joe. Amazing composer, arranger. You'll hear his bio at the beginning, so I won't give you any spoilers. Have a listen to all the fabulous things he's done. And the conversation went in a whole lot of different directions. I really loved it. It was thought-provoking and heartwarming. It was just magic to get to know him a little. And I'm sure that you, my listeners, will love to get to know Joe Twist a little bit better as well. And I want to welcome to the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, Joe Twist. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Debbie. Thanks for having me.
A delight. And I would like to start by reading your bio. So I'll see how I go. Let me know if I get anything wrong. Okay, here we go. Australian composer, arranger, Joe Twist straddles film music and concert music arenas. He has received wide acclaim for his music for film and television, including successful animated series Bluey and the strange Chores, as well as arrangements and orchestrations for many motion pictures produced in Hollywood. He has created music for many renowned international artists and ensembles, such as Moby and The Wiggles, and his works have been performed and recorded by the world's greatest orchestras, including collaborations with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, the Hollywood Scoring Orchestra, and all major symphony orchestras in Australia. Twist receives numerous commissions and performances of his music from choirs in Australia and around the world. And I'll wait till everyone hears these choirs, good heavens, including the Choir of Trinity College, Cambridge, Chanticleer, Voices 8, The Idea of North, the Young New York Chorus, LA Choral Lab, Sydney Chamber Choir, the Australian Voices, Gondwana Voices, Adelaide Chamber Singers, and many more. Credits include vocal and operatic works such as The Grumpiest Boy in the World, Victorian Opera, and the landmark LGBTQ rights work Watershed, The Death of Dr. Duncan, which received rave reviews following its Opera Australia season in the Sydney Opera House just this year in 2024, directed by Neil Armfield. Well, and I know, Joe, that's your short bio. And I sort of feel like, okay, I'm here talking to this famous person, and all you listeners out there, you're about to hear from a famous person. So, Joe, listening to this brief bio I just presented, what would you like to add to that summary?
Nothing, because because there's so much already there. I hearing you rattle it off, I'm thinking, oh gosh, it's so eclectic. I do so many things. Maybe that I have worked with the Sydney Children's Choir and Gondwana Voices for, well, I used to when I lived in Sydney more, but I used to teach sight reading there. And that I love writing music for all different things. I mean, I even have a horror film that's just come out that I've scored. But I love writing music for kids, which is not a horror film. It's completely different. So the only other thing I would kind of add as an idea is that kids stuff is where I really love being, and that in the end, what I love doing is telling stories through music, whether it be, something that's not for kids at all, and something that is totally for kids, yeah.
Do you find, because I had a little listen to part of the Death of Dr. Duncan, so not for kids, that one, can I say?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But you're telling a very important story.
Hmm.
So I find this actually with a few of the composers that I talk to, is that storytelling is often at the heart of what they do. Um,
Hmm.
do you think do do you have a preference? If you were told you can only write for adults or only for children forevermore, what would you pick?
I would actually choose children, even though weirdly, I mean, I think Watershed is probably my most important work now, and it's not for kids. But if someone said you had to choose the rest of your life, I would absolutely choose for kids. I mean, I'm really lucky that I work with Joff Bush on Bluey. I guess, yes, we should point out that I'm not Joff Bush and I didn't write the incredible theme, and I've done about 20 episodes of that show. And a bunch on albums and arrangements and things like that too. But and also the Strange Chores, by the way, is the same animation studio, so it's sort of connected with the same composing group. But I love doing, like, whether it were a feature film or a choral piece, I love doing stuff for kids because I'm a big kid, really. And even where I come from as a musician in terms of the storytelling element. I mean, yeah, I love being adult and being kind of intelligent and sometimes even political and really thought-provoking about things. And with this said, of course, there's no reason why we can't challenge children, with important things. I mean, obviously, there's things that are made for kids, and Watershed isn't one of them. But in the end, I'm just a big kid, and look, I even feel like I came to music really through mostly composers like John Williams and Alan Silvestri, Jerry Goldsmith, and that's all the stuff that I look back at with great nostalgia growing up. Star Wars, Back to the Future, big kid kind of movies, I guess, in a way. But also, when it comes to working on animation, that has the same flavor, and for choral music. So, I just, anything that is positive and wild-eyed and whimsical, I love doing that the most, I think, because I just think that writing stuff for kids has the most potential for being whimsical and positive in that way. And I will add, though, just one last thing. You did mention in my bio too one piece that is for kids, the other opera I have, which is called The Grumpiest Boy in the World. And I adored working on that. It's lots of fun. It's a 45-minute opera that is so made for kids in every sense. Like it's only, well, actually, it can only go for, sometimes it goes for 38 if you play it fast enough. So it's just, it just brings them right into the world of opera immediately with this kind of accessible story about a kid who's grumpy, but then realizes his special place in the world. And he meets monsters and giants and talking birds and all sorts of crazy stuff. So, I say whimsical. Maybe the other word I'm looking for is magic. And in my opinion, if you can fuse magic and storytelling together, then you're on a winner, and that's what kids love, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I want to see it now. Grumpiest boy
Right.
in the world. How would you see it?
Yeah,
Just
that's probably more difficult. There is actually an educational resource that Victorian Opera created. I would just head to their website and see if you can find the grumpiest boy in the world. I really should go looking for that. But they actually created an educational resource for schools to use with that. So I couldn't recommend that more highly too. There's little bits that you can sing as a chorus and you can learn before you kind of go in with your class, before you go in and watch the opera, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you can, I really should put more of that on my website a bit too. I focus a little bit more on scores that are available, which are, most of my educational stuff is available through Sing Score, by the way, who has Paul Jarman and Dan Walker and all sorts of other great Australian composers. I think Jess Wells is on there and Sally Whitwell possibly as well.
yeah, yeah. And I have to
Yeah,
interrupt here because guess what?
no. Hmm.
I am now on Sing Score.
Oh, great. Are you, Debbie? That's
I
fantastic. Welcome.
am.
That's great.
I
I've been
got a little
noticing
bit
that lately.
excited. I'm
No,
a bit
absolutely.
excited. My works are not to be compared to yours, but
Oh, no.
um, I look at the composers that are on Sing Score and go, oh goodness. But anyway,
But you know, I firmly believe more and more people can compose. Like, I mean, I do it for a job every day. Like, that's all I do. But I encourage people more and more to write, and I often really think that. I mean, I've seen stuff written for kids, for schools, by teachers, and I'm usually learning from you because I don't stand in front of children every day. I kind of have this backwards kind of thing where I do a thing that I think is like, you know, good for kids, and then I present it to directors. And by the way, some of them on Bluey, like Joe Brum, Charlie Aspinwall, are, well, not only are they versed very much in animation, but also in education. Like, they're very well versed in even the philosophy, I think, of education. And the feedback I get is fascinating. So I'm always learning. Like, I probably really should even just do a degree in education or something like that. So what I'm trying to say is, like, do not underestimate. I think some of the best stuff written for kids is not written by full-time composers, for sure.
I think
Yeah.
what you need, ideally, of course, is both. And what I
Yeah.
do in my little simple works is I understand children and I know what their vocal range is. You know, I've done quite a lot of training in choral work and whatever. So I know a lot of mine are a way to introduce two-part singing. So there's only this small part of soprano alto. And, you know, so like yes, I think having the education part and the experience with kids really helps. But I am, believe me, I am very aware I lack the depth of compositional knowledge that someone like you have. So what you need is both. And I'm
You
sure
do.
you've worked with kids so much, you have that knowledge of kids too. But anyway, I don't want to talk about me, but I
I
will.
do, but I just want to say one little thing is I feel like the issue I have sometimes, and the difficult thing is that it is a box, which it can be really creative sometimes. But you have to be creative to write something that's going to be accessible, that's going to challenge, but also be doable, but yet is also kind of creative and and you know, has a story to it and that kind of stuff. It's tricky, and sometimes I assume something can be done easily. And then I learn it can't, and then that's how you write your next piece a lot better.
Or you just go, I'll just edit that, kids. Yeah.
That's right. There's that.
And just before we leave this particular topic, I really believe, like you, that more people should write, because it's like I tell my preps, my 4-year-olds, you're a musician. You are in my room, you are singing, you are playing, you are involved. You're a musician. I don't believe a musician is the professional that gets paid for their work. They're all musicians. They're all artists. You
Yeah,
know,
for sure.
it's an important part of an element of your soul. Oh, that's being
Yep.
a bit deep, isn't it?
Oh, I like it though. It's true. But I think that it's completely true. And that's it really goes to the idea that we don't need to divorce ourselves from the music. Like, we share the music as a group. And that it's an even though it's written down on a score, it's never really, that's really just a representation of what it is. So it's not really a thing until it comes out of your mouths and audiences listen to it, or we listen to each other as we sing. So yeah, it's this ever evolving beast. I think to be very philosophical about it makes a lot of sense.
I love it. Tell us about your composition journey. Now you've alluded to it. When you were young, you loved those
Yeah.
big movie, and it's great. You've ended up writing movie music yourself. You know, you're sort of living your dream. But I'm sure that was quite a journey, I would imagine.
Yeah. And it's still going on. It feels I never really believe that I've kind of am actually doing what I'm doing, because when you still, it's still a struggle when you do it, and it's still a job, dare I say. You know, I still have taxes to pay and what have you. But the journey, yeah, it really starts with, I mean, I'm just a kid from the Gold Coast, you know, and it starts with film scores in particular. I just was fascinated by these colors and emotions and this matching of picture and music, not just sound, but music specifically, which is interesting. And I guess it really came out in the movies of that time, the sort of post Star Wars period. Harry Potter would be another one that's a bit later. Things like that have these distinctive melodies, but these beautiful orchestration. But even then, sometimes they might not have much melody. They kind of are an undercurrent, and they're always there telling a story. But you know, that's Hollywood, and I'm Joe from the Gold Coast. And then I went to, you know, I sang in choir in school. I went to Kibra Park State High. It's really more of a football school, but I was the choir captain. I had great teachers. We had no facilities, I must say. There was no grand piano in the place, but hopefully that's changed. But the teachers were fantastic. The choir was a way to join with friends and sing, and I loved harmonizing and learning about harmony. And I'd be sort of discovering all these different colors that were in the film scores as well, but also then being introduced to how they actually take from the classical canon in particular, you know, the hundreds of years of that. But the other thing that brings it to, I guess just to go to the next journey is UQ, because UQ had a very strong choral program, particularly with James Cuskelly. I sang in Concentus with Richard Swan for a while. And I also sang for many years with Graham Morton in Brisbane Chamber Choir as well. And Stephen Leake. I mean, I did a lot with these strange voices at different times. So moved to Brisbane, got into that whole choral world. But what I realized really that I had this interest in musical storytelling. And even though I wasn't doing film, with choir, yeah, it's not film, but it's still music and it's still storytelling. It's words and it's music. It's a different kind of thing. And so I've really juggled too. I mean, I do write orchestral works and chamber works as well. But you know, having that kind of background of film and always wanting to do it, and choral, I mean, I really built up the choral throughout my 20s, wondered more and more about film, but film's a real thing you got to get into. And the technology, it's such a technology thing. In fact, I mean, just to sort of, you know, describe the two ideas that I am, the choir and the film. One is so non-tech. We stand in with these days a PDF, I guess it is tech, but we stand with a piece of paper, right, in a group in a room, and we just sing, and then maybe there's a piano, right? And a film is really a recording medium. Like, you collaborate, but the way you conceive it often isn't necessarily even writing music down these days. I did this whole horror film just recently where I just had all these different sounds pre-recorded in my computer, and I just had the director here and we just played with them, and then I wrote a few melodies and did that kind of thing. So and then you go and record it, you have to write some things out for the musicians. So it's a whole different way of thinking about music compared to the way choral music usually is. Although, I mean, in choral music, some of the best ways to do it sometimes is just to improvise in class, isn't it? So there's a connection. But in the end, there's, you know, the language, the words that we sing are a story that we create. And the way that John Williams may choose a French horn with its sort of noble and heroic quality for the Force theme or for Luke Skywalker, in choral music, we think of, what I've just thought about recently is that really it's melodies and it's rhythms and it's words, but it's actually elongated vowels separated by consonants if you break it down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is, you know, that's just taking all the fun out. But the reason why I'm breaking it down like that is because what I thought is it, like, you use colors to denote something, to be almost, there's a word I learned in academia, symbiotic, not symbiotic, semiotic, sorry, similar sounding word.
Yes.
Semiotic, the symbolism of a thing, of a creative sound, like a French horn playing a melody in a minor key, which has all these symbols to it. So does an oo vowel and an ah vowel. And when we sing oo vowels, like there's an absolute purity to it. An e vowel is a different kind of thing. So I really think there's a connection there, because that's just sort of like all film composers use different instruments and different combinations of them to create colors and create moods and symbolize things. In choral music, the story's already there, and we do symbolize things like it's a script. And maybe there's a word like, I should have thought about this before I kept going. Maybe there's a word like sky, perfect. And it's an R vowel. And it is the thing, right? Now, you wouldn't generally, I mean, I guess the idea I'm describing here was word painting, but you generally wouldn't think, if you're going to symbolize a sky as you sing it, that it would be low voiced, very closely with notes very close together. It might be a minor key. I mean, I guess if you say gloomy sky, then it's a whole different thing. And ooh is an interesting idea, that's an ooh vowel opening up to ah. So that's a color in a sense. So then you think, okay, well, how do I'm literally just breaking down how I think about composing here, I know, and I'm getting really in the weeds. But just to summarize, this is how I think about the link between film music and choral music. It's storytelling, and it's kind of the same thing, just in a whole different way.
Yeah, I
That
love
was a
it.
lot.
No, I love it. And I think that gives us a very different perspective. Like I get how they're both storytelling, but I'd never
Mm,
thought you're talking about tone, timbre and tone color
mm,
and related to, like you were saying, length of sound and the color of the vowel and where it's placed in
mm.
the voice. Because
Where it's placed in the voice, exactly.
yeah, all of those things. And what you're really doing is composing very in a similar way to instrumentation if you're doing it
That's
for
right.
an orchestra. And I'd never thought of it like that, but that makes complete sense.
Mm. Look, and I think about all this after the fact, I must admit. Like when I've written a lot of pieces, it's just it happens intuitively,
Yes.
really. Because you sing with a choir and you get to know repertoire and you see what other composers have done. You go, oh, that's cool. But what if I did this text and I did this way, borrowed a bit of that? It all happens that way. But it's just interesting to break it down. And I just like to relate it to film music because it's kind of where I started and what I wanted to be. And then choral music is something that happened as I grew up, and there was just more opportunity. But I realized the reason why I was drawn to was, one, just the sort of physical element of me loving singing with people and discovering music and harmony, but also because there's a connection to the process, in my opinion. It's like it's still because really we get very visual, I think, sometimes. And I know it's sort of backwards, but we get sent a film most of the time. When you do film music, you score the music on top of the movie. Sometimes it happens the other way, but it's rare. Like if you're writing a song for characters, right? Usually it's a response. Whereas choral music, it's like they've written a script and there's so many verses, and if the poet is dead, you better not change the order of the words. But if they're still alive, and I love collaborating with lyricists, by the way, then you can kind of have, ask them, oh, do you mind if I do this? And can I just switch these words around, then that's the kind of collaborative thing. But it's the same sort of thing. And it also reminds me of something that John Williams said, that he thinks of himself more of less as a artist and more as an artisan, or in a sense that he's kind of a journalist rather than a novelist.
Oh.
Because he's using his technique and he's using procedures that are musical, but it's not as though he sort of owns them. It's not as though he creates them. It's more that he provides them as a service. And I like that idea. I relate more to that. I mean, I think there's artistry to it, and it's a kind of very modest way, I guess, of describing what it is we do. But I think it's just film and choral music in particular, I think, have a great opportunity for collaboration and storytelling in that way. And that we think this is bigger than just ourselves, But who doesn't love going to a Mahler symphony where really it's all about Mahler and he's just created this magic thing. So I'm not, there's different things, but I love the kind of collaborative element of all of it.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned a lyricist. Do you prefer to write music with a lyricist, or do you like to do words and music yourself, or just a mixture?
I haven't written words to a piece since I wrote a piece called Rain Dream, which is for Gondwana Voices.
Oh, funny you should mention
And
that. I played it
oh,
to at the time of recording. Sorry, because I'm recording a couple of months ahead.
okay.
Yesterday I played a segment of Rain Dream
Oh, lovely.
to a hopefully very wide online audience. It was beautiful. It
Thank
was
you.
Gondwana. I took a snippet
Yeah.
from the Gondwana performance. Oh, so
Thank you.
beautiful.
No, thank you. I mean, I feel like it's actually one of the best creative ideas I've had, and I don't usually have them. I just had this idea of a child who lives in the bush who's never seen rain.
Mm.
I think I just heard it on the news because we were going through such drought in the early 2000s, right? Which is when I wrote it. And I just thought, there really should be what if you wrote a choir piece? And I knew there was a competition for Gondwana as well. And so that's where the stars align, but I very rarely have them, I must admit, which is why I kind of come to everyone else. I often use a lyricist. I mean, look, even just to go to Watershed, we're talking about, that was collaborating with Christos Chalkas, who wrote The Slap, Alana Valentine, who's a great playwright. But I often work with, for my educational stuff, a wonderful poet who you might know named Joshua Clifford.
I know, Josh. Hi, Josh. Shout out.
Yeah, shout out to Josh. Absolutely. And look, I mean, he was in Birrelli for years, and he wrote these beautiful poems, I think, for an Anzac service at one point. I think they even went to Versailles at one point. And I said his words, and it was so natural, and we did more and more of it. There was even a really interesting one where there's a piece on Things School people can look up, which is called Flying Home. And he kind of actually rewrote words. I had actually set the words from a Sesame Street song, which is, you probably all know, Ernie sings it. I don't want to live on the moon. Well, I would like to visit the moon, sorry. Like to visit the moon. Da, 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 da. Anyway, I tried to see if I could, get the rights to use the words. Jeff Moss, is the composer of that. Anyway, he still lives, and the studios kept saying to me, look, a song is a song. The words and the music are one. You cannot separate them unless you get a contract and rights, and we're not even interested. So I just realized, okay, well, I've got a cool melody here, and people like the piano part, and the vocal part's kind of great for kids. So I need to rewrite this. And Josh came to the rescue, and we turned it into Flying Home, and it had the same kind of sense of wonder and the same sort of bittersweetness, but warmth as well to it. I think in that song. So yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to do things, and Rain Dream is one where I just kind of had an idea and went for it, and I think it's relatively successful. But then most of the time I want to collaborate with people, and I guess that again goes to the whole film thing, because directors and animators, what have you, come to you and they've got this thing and they want music for it, and yeah, and I've just done another piece with Josh's words. I collaborate with a South Australian lyricist called Jodie O'Regan. She writes a lot of lullabies. You can look her up. She's fantastic. And also my dad. I mean, that's in some ways where my sort of side interest in literature, although I'm really not an expert. I think I'm very visual, but and also finding text for that's suitable to sing can be quite specialized thing as well. It's not, you can love literature and you can get into Ulysses S. Grant and Tennyson and whatever and think this is brilliant poetry, but to sing it would just kind of actually do the words disservice. It's a special thing, I think, that we do when we write choral music in particular. So yeah, I like to do it all, but collaborating is my focus most of the time.
Yeah, I love that. I think collaborating, one of my favorite sayings is 1 + 1 = a lot more than 2.
Absolutely. And even if it's like something where you've done it, but someone might just add a suggestion, or just write, even just, I mean, I've done this on film scores too. I mean, sometimes you've got a lot of music to write, and there's a bit that's just really difficult, and a composer who's probably really good at this kind of stuff, because we try and be eclectic and do what we do, but there's maybe just something that's a little bit out of our comfort zone or our wheelhouse. So you get someone else to write it. But it's still part of your work, you get someone else to just kind of, what would you do with this bit of the text maybe? And they just give you a suggestion, and, whether it's a co-write or not, you work that out later. But you can't be precious about this stuff. And, in a sense, it's, art is tricky, and you would know this, we change the music that composers have written all the time for our own groups, because we just have to, and we rearrange. And that doesn't
diminish
the beauty of the art.
Yeah.
That's right. It doesn't diminish the beauty of the idea of the composer. It's in many ways it kind of shows that how, again, we were saying about how we're all composers and we should all share this, the sort of philosophical thing you were describing earlier about.
It really is magic. I've got 2 little pieces that I've not put on Sing Score because, pardon me, they're Jams and I collaborated And
Okay.
we came and worked here in my office just back over there.
Great.
And it was like, if I could live my life like that, I'd be a very happy
Yeah.
little chappy. And I had 2 little pieces I'd written, and I said, but look, the piano part's not great because I'm just an average, pianist. And he goes, well, if we added this, and then we looked at how I'd laid it, he said, then we can, I mean, this is over time. This is,
Yeah,
we spent
sure.
a fair bit, and we have this little unaccompanied part here. Let's just sing piano disc. And it just magic, just these little bits, even though the pieces were written, but they were nothing special. But with the 2 of us on them, I think they're really quite special now because we
Fabulous.
collaborated.
Fabulous. I love that. And also, I mean, what I like about what I do in some sense too is I'm jumping from a show. I'm often working on the Strange Chores recently, by the way, which is on ABC Me. It's even more than Bluey. It's a bit more specifically directed at kids. But I just wanted to talk about eclecticism, I guess, in that I'm in this show called The Strange Chores, which is about monster hunters and fighting off goblins and fun stuff like that. It's very sort of Harry Potter. And then I'm writing a serious choral work for church. I do a bunch of church music as well. Totally different. I love the storytelling that happens in church as well. I'm not particularly religious as a person, but I love the ceremony of it and everything. So, yeah, if you're eclectic, then you can kind of offer what you can to different people at different times, the way you did with Jams,
I think it's great.
all
And
part
you
of that
know
magic.
what? You don't get so bored.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to say too. That's kind of what I was trying to head with that, is that I do this every day. And if I mean, I love writing choral pieces, but I got to tell you, like, sometimes I've had commissions sort of 3, 4 in a row, and they're all quite similar. I'm like, oh, I'm out of ideas. Like, I just don't know what to do next, So when I'm working on a TV show, like something totally different and a whole different way of thinking, because it's more recording. Like you don't turn up to these sessions with directors with a score at all. You just you put the music in the video, you send the video to them, or you just go to a studio and you play it with them these days. And you just watch their faces and hope and pray that they like it. Often they don't.
As we know, laughter relieves stress. Don't lose sight of the funny side of life. Now, what do you call a fish wearing a bow tie? Well, of course, sophisticated. Sophisticated. Thank you so much for watching our Crescendo Music Education podcast. For more information about all things crescendo, including membership and music education resources, visit us at crescendo.com.au. Don't forget to like and subscribe.